It's a Sunday night, April 12th, 2020. Hold up, wait a minute, let's back up for a sec. We'll eventually get to that very dark day. But first, who is Kyle freaking Larson?
Here comes Speed Racer, he's a demon on wheels.
Oh, him? Just a generational talent that's compared to the likes of AJ Foyt and Tony Stewart because of his ability to climb inside of any type of race car and succeed in it. The dude is one of the most entertaining drivers to watch, and that's something I noticed right when he entered NASCAR, and it's one of the main reasons why I'm a big fan of his. He's a risk taker, he's a driver that goes for it, and while it's really cool seeing that, it has led to him making a fool of himself at times, which is why some of the fan base likes to clown him. He's a check or a records type of racer, and with that, you're going to see him make mistakes, but when he's not making those mistakes, he usually ends up being pretty successful. Everyone could just see how much talent the guy has, which is why he was one of the biggest free agents in 2020. Chip Ganassi Racing was the team he had drove for since 2014. Chip took a chance on Larson despite Larson not bringing any money to the table. Over that time period, he drove the wheels off the CGR 42 car all the way up until 2020. Even though he only won 7 points per races, he found himself contending for many race wins with an organization that was and has always been a B-level team. Myself and many others believe that if Larson ever got with a top-notch organization like a Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, or Penske, he would be a major force. When 2020 approached, he was in the news because he was one of the hottest free agents around that time. The two teams that were front runners of getting Larson were Hendrick Motorsports and Stewart-Haas Racing. Keep in mind that this was before everything went down. He was consistently in the news about his free agency, and I remember right before the shutdown, it seemed like all signs were pointing at Hendrick Motorsports to be the landing spot for Kyle Larson. I think so many people forget about this and try to run with this made up narrative that he got signed by Hendrick Motorsports out of nowhere after his big mistake. Larson possibly in the Hendrick car. How was I feeling about this? Ecstatic, because there was a good chance that he was finally going to be in some grade 8 equipment in NASCAR. It was starting to feel similar to what my other favorite driver went through in 2007. Dale Earnhardt Jr. was a huge free agent that year, and up to that point, he spent his career driving for his father team, which was good, but they weren't a Hendrick Motorsports. Kyle Larson was in a similar situation. Larson returning to CGR was an option, but if you got a team like Hendrick Motorsports knocking on your door, there's no way you'll just pass them up. Jeff Gordon was one of Larson's idols growing up, and here's that guy calling you up to race for them. Another driver Larson idolized is Tony Stewart, and he also wanted him on his team. I know Larson mentioned Chip Ganassi giving him his shot and wanted to stay loyal to him, but I doubt if he would have resigned with the team. If he would have did that, it would have been similar to Ward Burton staying loyal to Bill Davis and turning down mega teams like Roush at the time. So Larson was pretty much in a lame duck season with CGR, and to start that season he got 2 top 10s in 4 races, and then the pandemic happened. Everything came to a halt, and it was just a crazy time period. With all sporting leagues out of action, everyone is trying to find something to do. One thing that took off was iRacing. Real drivers were setting up races pretty much every night, and a lot of these races were being streamed. Kyle Larson agreed last minute to participate in the iRacing event. So, on Sunday night, April 12th, 2020, I'm in a party chat on a PlayStation with my brother and a few friends of ours. I'm just chilling. Next thing you know, one of my friends with panic in his voice said, "Larson just said a racial slur on iRacing. It's all on my timeline." My first reaction was, man, quit playing. I kind of chuckled because I'm thinking that he was trying to mess with me. He kept saying he was dead serious, and then another friend of mine was saying the same thing. So I paused my game, I launched up Twitter, and unfortunately, it was actually true.
You don't hear me at all. I can see it. You can't hear me? Hey. Wow, hey.
Kyle, you're talking to everyone, but
Yeah, we heard that. Yikes.
Just like that, Kyle Larson was suspended from NASCAR for saying a racial slur. I just couldn't believe what was happening. 2020 up to that point was already crazy enough, and then this ends up happening. Not too long after the incident, Kyle Larson put out a short video on Twitter apologizing for saying a racial slur, but the damage was already done. So, what was my reaction to Larson saying what he said? I guess I'll go ahead and make this part very brief because I really don't want to spend too much time talking about it. Some of you that follow me probably know this about me, and those who are new to the channel probably don't know this. I am black, and honestly I didn't have as strong of a reaction as you thought I would have, and that's just the honest truth. I think it's important to clarify that I'm speaking for myself when I say that. I'm not speaking for anyone else, and I really want to make that clear. Yes, I was very disappointed with Larson and what he said, and it was definitely a no-no because what he said is offensive to the African American community. The whole situation was just very upsetting, and I already know what some people might say. Of course you didn't have a strong reaction, that's your boy, so obviously you're going to give him a pass. No, that's not the case. Joey Logano, a driver I don't like, could have said the same thing Larson said and my reaction would have been the exact same. My thoughts about the situation wouldn't be any different. I feel like you can be very disappointed in someone or something without showing rage and ready to pull out the pitchforks. And that's how I pretty much reacted to the Larson situation. I was one of those people hoping he'll right his wrong and maybe get a second chance. The next day after his huge mistake, Kyle Larson got fired by Chip Ganassi Racing and then eventually getting suspended by NASCAR, which wasn't a shock to me. Was he going to come back from this was the million-dollar question. I was very doubtful if you would have asked me right after it happened, but I quickly started to have some hope that maybe he can come back from this. Now, NASCAR really didn't need something like this happening because, well, the interest in NASCAR was already dropping rapidly throughout the 2010s, so any negative publicity doesn't help. Then it happened at the worst possible time. Everything was shut down and everyone is at home, so this easily became the #1 trending topic, and it just made NASCAR's image look worse than it already is by outsiders. It makes NASCAR look like it's a sport where not everyone is welcome, and we all know that ain't the case. NASCAR has become so diverse, especially within the past 2 decades. A question that I got asked after everything went down was, who are you going to root for now, Elite? Honestly, I didn't know if I was going to root for anyone. It was drivers in the field that I liked, but I never could really gravitate towards anyone. I always been a Chevy guy, so I would most likely find myself rooting for whoever drove one. At the time, Chase Elliott was up there when it came to drivers I liked, so when he won the championship that year, I was happy for him. Even though that championship should have been Kevin Harvick's, but I won't open that can of worms. When NASCAR resumed at Darlington that year, it was the first time I had no dog in the fight since 2002. If you don't know, I became a Dale Jr. fan in 2003 and rooted for him all the way until he retired. And with Larson, I've been a fan of his since his K&N days, and he became my favorite alongside with Dale Jr. until Jr. retired. And since then, it's been Larson. So when the green flag waved at Darlington, it was the weirdest feeling ever. The 42 car was driven by, let's be honest here, a washed up Matt Kenseth. And man, it was just so odd seeing the 42 driven by someone else after seeing Larson in it since 2014. Even with me having no favorite driver in the field, I still watched because I'm a huge fan of the sport, not just because of a driver that I latched on to. So racing is resuming without Kyle Larson, and speaking of him, what was happening with Larson? A few days after the incident, he was already eyeing a comeback to NASCAR and enrolled in sensitivity training. Hearing this news was good, but I don't know if anybody was going to pick him up. For a little while, I'm thinking that if he did get signed by someone, it was probably going to be a back market team. But something to remember about Kyle Larson is how talented he is. He's a generational talent, and as we saw, teams still wanted Larson even after the incident. You just couldn't pass up on a driver like him. NASCAR made it clear that if he follows the protocols and completes his sensitivity training, he'll get reinstated. As the year went on, things got better. He got reinstated by the World of Outlaws and was absolutely going crazy with his dirt racing that year. He won pretty much every big dirt race you can name. They said he had one of the best seasons by a dirt racer ever. To see Larson just back on track racing again was already something me and other Larson fans were thankful to see, but to witness the history he was making on the dirt scene was icing on the cake. And while doing this, he was becoming a better person whether people want to believe it or not. Acknowledging the hard lessons being taught, gaining perspective, and putting everything he learned into action instead of just saying it. Yes, I wanted Larson to get back to racing, but I also wanted him to learn from this and take those steps to becoming a better person. I think if people take the time to realize their mistakes and try to be better, then I can pretty much respect them for that. Good luck trying to explain that to a ton of people though. More rumblings started to surface of Larson's NASCAR comeback throughout the summer. Even if you're not a Kyle Larson fan, you gotta admit that this storyline was fun to follow. Larson fans like myself were ecstatic. I remember David Land, a motorsports YouTuber, was uploading so many videos regarding Kyle Larson around this time. He was all on top of the storyline, which was kinda shocking because he primarily covers INDYCAR, but it was great to see. There's actually an entire playlist of David Land's Kyle Larson coverage. The best part about him covering Kyle Larson is that you're always guaranteed this amazing intro.
It's a Kyle Larson video!
As the fall approached, things were becoming brighter for Kyle Larson and his fans like myself. On October 19th, 2020, NASCAR reinstated him. Now the question was, what team would he drive for in 2021? That question was quickly answered about a week later. The news broke that Kyle Larson would be joining Hendrick Motorsports. After so much that has happened, so many questions that surrounded Kyle Larson, he had a clear path ahead. Of course I was happy, other Larson fans were happy, and even some people that aren't the biggest Larson fans were pretty excited to see him return to NASCAR. However, there was and still is quite a bit of people out there that feel like he didn't deserve the Hendrick Motorsports ride. I heard things like how he should have been driving for a backmarket team when he made his return. Why? I feel like Larson suffered the consequences for his actions. I think a lot of people forget just how bleak his future was after his big mistake. He lost everything. He had to sell his home. His image took a huge hit for the worse, and he didn't know if he was going to come back from that. The unknown can be scary, and Larson probably thought he was finished after his big mistake. What saved Kyle Larson's career? You could point to his efforts in trying to become a better person, but his talent played a huge role in him getting his big second chance. Kyle Larson is a very special talent. Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart sees it, and that's exactly why they went back to chasing after him once he was reinstated back into NASCAR. Yes, you heard that right. Before Larson's big mistake, these two organizations were gunning for Larson, and of course, once the pandemic happened and Larson made his mistake, it brought everything to a pause. This opportunity for him didn't just open up out of nowhere, which is the narrative many people like to run with. This ride just wasn't gift wrapped to him. Whether he made his big mistake or not, he would have most likely ended up in a Hendrick Motorsports or Stewart-Haas Racing ride. Obviously, we know how this story ends. He joins the team that's the New York Yankees of NASCAR, and that's Hendrick Motorsports. The contract gets signed, and now we wait to see what Larson can do in the Hendrick car. I predict that he'll win about 3 or 4 races and make it to the round of 8 in his first season with HMS. I felt that was pretty realistic. Turns out that was way off. Kyle Larson said, "Nah, I'm about to go full on Jeff Gordon 1998 on the field." After that checkered flag flew at Phoenix, we all witnessed one of the greatest comeback stories in NASCAR history. It's one thing to just return. It's another to return and end up having some success. But to come back and have a historic season that Kyle Larson had is absolutely unreal. I wasn't used to seeing my favorite drivers win constantly up to this point. It felt like a dream. This was my reaction pretty much all throughout 2021. I just couldn't believe what I witnessed. I want to wrap up this video by saying this. Kyle Larson will never be viewed the same way again since he made that big mistake. It's been almost a half a decade since the incident, and while yes, a lot of people outside the NASCAR bubble has forgotten about it, there's a lot of NASCAR fans that will never let him live that down, and you see it in the comment section anytime his name is brought up. While it's true that Larson made his bed by saying what he said, these people need to be ignored. Nobody out here is perfect. Apparently these people that spam these comments of calling him a you know what are perfect human beings. They've never made mistakes. They've never said anything ignorant during their lifetime. Bullshit. Nobody is perfect out here, I don't care who you are. While it's true that Larson is a well-known figure and needs to be more aware of what he say, he's still a human being at the end of the day, and humans aren't wired to be perfect. Kyle Larson's comeback story is something a lot of people can look at as inspirational. Messing up is a part of life, but you can tell if someone's heart is in the right place if they're willing to put in the effort to become a better person. Kyle Larson did just that and went on a journey that some people refuse to go on because they simply don't care about learning from their mistakes. You can't say that about Kyle Larson. He went above and beyond, he got the second chance, and you just never know what that second chance might bring to your life.